We're good. Oh, I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Yes, I am. Oh, God. Hello, Vanessa. Thank you so much for your time today. I really value and appreciate you making time, especially the day after your birthday. So thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you.
much.
Thank
Thank
you. It's
you.
a pleasure to be on with you as always.
Oh, amazing, amazing. I'm so glad we connected a few years ago and we've actually, worked together in person, which is amazing. Yeah, and I know you're coming back next year, which is amazing to Australia. So yay.
I can't wait.
I can't wait either. I know many people already know you from our community, but I will just go over a couple of things just to introduce you before we jump into the questions. So, Vanessa, I adore that you're a speaker, a counselor, an author, a parenting educator, an amazing one at that, and a former child psychologist. I love how you empower your mums to be the best that they can be for their children, so they really connect into that parent-child relationship. It's a brilliant life mission, and you do it so well. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It's an honor.
So I suppose today, being Mums Month, May, I really want to pair back to even taking a layer back to what you do beyond that education for parents, to preparing parents to be the person that they can be for their child. So how do they get into the space to be the parent? For their child. So what do they do to be able to have that deeper connection with them? So I want to tap into what you do and also some advice that you can give parents to how they can be, especially mums, how they can be the best they can be. So Mums Wellbeing is the topic today. And I think the first question I'll give you is, why do you think, or do you think it's so important for mums to focus on their well-being? And some of your practices, if you'd like to share some that you value and tap into. Thanks.
Yeah. I think it's not only important, but essential that moms are okay, and not even just okay, but that they get to thrive and they get to live their best, biggest, awesomest life, because you can only take someone as far as you've taken yourself. And if we're going to grow our children into adults who are able to live um, relatively satisfying lives, who are capable of connecting in meaningful relationships intimately, professionally, and who are contributing members, of this
Mm,
whole global society that we live in, that we have to first show up for ourselves. And because of the way we are socialized as women, we often don't have ourselves on the priority list. And what's really crazy, Rhiannon, is that when I was training as a psychologist, I never, ever was taught about the importance of parents and their well-being, and in
mm,
this case, mothers. And when I came into motherhood myself, it continued to be a foreign concept to me. It wasn't until, I felt like my own life was kind of imploding, that I wasn't living the kind of life in my home that I was speaking about in public and with my clients, that I needed to take a deep look at my own
mm,
practices in order to be able to like stand tall and strong within my own self, so that I could show up for my children and show up for my clients, to be honest.
mm.
Thus was the beginning of a journey, let me tell you.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I know. I love that. I love that so much. And you
Mm.
just said it so eloquently. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Um, can you please share some of the practices that you found most valuable? I'd love to hear, and I'm sure everyone else would love to hear too.
Yeah, so my practices, even continuing to this day, involve a lot of inner work and a lot of time considering that a no to others is often a yes to the self. And I came into motherhood, as many of us do, with a giant people-pleasing complex, and
Mm,
just thought that it was my job to be and to do all of the things so that everybody around me would be okay. And what
Mhm.
I have realized actually is that which is to the greatest good of self
Mm.
will be to the greatest good of all. Second to that, if I am only for self, then who am I? So it's not that I just show up and do as I wish. Best of luck to all y'all. And it is that I must first show up for myself. That is my primary obligation in terms of not just personal growth, but also, and maybe especially so as a mother, for my children to be okay. So I've have a few practices that I engage. First off, I am very connected to inner child work. And I
Mm.
have come to understand that whenever I have, agitation in the system, it's because there's something inside of me that is being reactive to something outside of me. Some maybe a decision that I've made, maybe a yes that I said that should have been a no. And so there's a part of me that has become agitated. And oftentimes that part of me is actually a child version of me. So it's
Yes.
the 5-year-old in me whose voice was never heard, or it's the 12-year-old in me who could never quite do it good enough. So it's those voices that come alive and create that
Mm.
agitation. And my job is to go to that child inside of me and reparent her so that she gets to feel seen and heard, so that she gets to know that she has worth and value for the simple fact that she breathes and she never has to
Mm.
perform to earn her worth, that her worth is inherent to her being. So to that end, and I don't just wait for agitation to perk up. I
Yeah.
I get proactive about it. Every morning, the very first thing that I do as I pass through that sort of misty period from being, asleep to awake is I go to her. So if you were to like, be a fly in the wall in my bedroom in the morning, you'll see me placing my hands. I feel her always in my chest and in my stomach. So I place my hands on her and it's just a greeting. It's a good morning. It's a checking in.
Mm.
It's a how is it feeling in there kind of check in. And it's a tending to and a caring for the parts of her that might need tending to and caring for before I then sort of open my world up to the rest of the people in my life and to the tasks of the day.
Mm.
I also do that as the very last thing before I go to sleep. So that
Mm.
I just as I go into, my children are now 17 and 20 years of age. My eldest son is a university student now home
Yeah.
for our summer. And I still go into their bedrooms every night before I go to bed. And I make sure I have a moment of connection with them. I check in with them. Is there anything that they need? And then I bid them a sweet rest
Mm.
that they may have some restorative time of sleep. And I'll see them in the morning. I do the very same thing with her. So as soon as
Mm.
I've tucked my own self into bed, I tuck her into bed and I check in. Is there anything in there that's rattling around that needs tending to and that needs
Mm.
caring for? And then of course, during the course of my day-to-day life, if I get agitated about something, I go to her first. And then my adult mind can come back online and I can make the appropriate decisions. Somewhat related to that practice of putting her first and always checking in with her, I also have set a sort of goal for myself that I
Mhm.
will create the schedule for me that I need before I create the schedule for, my children, my clients, my
Mm.
clinical team, all of the other kinds of people who are depending on me in my life. And so I work out very routinely for health and for well-being and for the emotional component of having an elevated heart rate, 30 minutes a day, freest, cheapest form of therapy that anybody could ever access.
Yes.
And that is sacred time. I don't let meetings budge in on that. I don't let other things budge in on that. I make sure that that time is carved out and set aside for me. I also continue to meet with my own therapist every second week in order to make sure that I am staying in my practice and I have, somebody who talks me through how that journey is
Yeah.
going and how that journey is feeling. And
Yes.
what was the hardest thing for me is I have, and this is a real practice of self care, I have learned what it means to codepend other people and how different it feels to stand in my truth and to
Mm.
speak that truth with power and grace no matter the potential implications. So, as an example, this week I've been a little bit under the weather. And each day has been its own little, set of trials around managing my schedule as I realize I'm actually really tired and my body isn't, um, up to the speed that it might normally run at. And so I've had to do some last minute cancellations for clients. And rather than pushing through those sessions, I just speak my truth with power and grace.
Mm,
Somewhat unapologetically, though it's not without care. I'm aware of how that
mm,
would maybe put a wrinkle in someone else's day. And I step in for the good of self because I know that that is what
mm.
is ultimately to the good of all. I mean, I'm no good to my clients, my family, anybody else if I'm not okay within myself. And so those are some of the things that I have
Oh,
at play.
wow. That was amazing. Thank you
Uh-huh.
so much. I mean, you touched on, so I was writing down a few things there because there was so much goodness.
Mhm.
I love the morning greeting and the finishing the day. I love it so much, and it's something that I do. I would say that I'm more of the morning, setting the tone of the day and the priorities, like the scheduling. Like what you said, setting your own tone for the day, setting out a couple of things that you are important to you, fitting yourself in, making sure that there's a moment for you. I think that that's something that's totally underestimated in our society today. And to hear you in your busy schedule and what all the things you're doing, that you're making time for it, it's refreshing to hear, and to hear the ripple effect of it is amazing. Yeah, I love that. I think doing that helps you to stand in your power and give that positive no, like, I'd love to, but I can't right now because this is a situation. I think that people, boundaries is something that as women we might tend to not have been taught or find challenging to buy into, but you do it so eloquently. And I'm so glad that you didn't cancel today, given that you're not really 100%. So I'm so appreciating that. But I do believe that if you set a boundary and say, oh, look, I can't right now, maybe let's postpone it, and people do have a reaction, that is really hard sometimes when they're not having, as you said, a wrinkle, or they have a negative response. It's really hard. However, you can't portray yourself. So I really love that, that comes with just honoring and knowing that you're worthy of that, self-care. So I really love it. And I think that those tiny practices that you're integrated and that build up over time, because you've obviously been doing this a while now, makes a big difference and allows you to travel the world and continue to do the amazing work you do. So I really appreciate, I love your congruence. I do agree with that. That when you are speaking the word, like, I fully value congruence. So I'd rather do nothing on the external if I'm not working on the internal and I'm not just growing and just sitting and being. And there's periods where you have to just sit and you can't do things because of whatever's going on in your life at the time. Um, and I suppose that brings me to my next question. During tough times, which we all have, challenging periods or moments, whether it be with ourselves or our children or our family, do you have any insight into things that you do in those times that might be a little bit different or extra or not as much maybe as self-care practices during tough times? So I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I'm reminded in this moment of a couple of books, both of which have to do with the body. So Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, and also Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No. And what's so interesting about, especially Gabor Mate's book, the idea that when we are not honoring of ourselves, especially during those tough times,
Mhm.
our bodies are going to let us know. And in fact, over time, there's a higher incidence of a lot of different kinds of diseases, especially, well, in all humans, but a lot of the work that Dr. Mate talks about is in women, where
Mm,
we develop autoimmune disorders and other kinds of things because we have not been honoring ourselves. And what's interesting for me, I have learned, and I will tell you it's by trial and fire that I have learned this. I did not heed the wisdom in front of me. I faced a series of my own health issues and other kinds of complications. And I've really learned to listen to the body and to never argue with it. And so
Mm.
this week I've been a little bit under the weather and I have not been at the gym doing my really intense workouts that I love to do because I'm honoring my body and I'm honoring my systems and I'm not arguing with that. I'm understanding that I need to create a little bit of extra space and time in my schedule for rest and for sleep. The other thing is that oftentimes, and I think it's maybe even more so nowadays, which is ironic, but we live in this time of like compare and despair, where social media and what my husband likes to call, he doesn't call Facebook, he calls it the jealousy page. Everybody is just, they're just posting the highlight reel. And
Mm.
because of that, we often are looking in on other people's lives and thinking like everybody else has it all together. And here I am struggling. And sometimes that can create a bit of isolation and silencing in us as women. And I have learned that it is incredibly important to not, I used to call it turtling. Like if you knew I was turtling, so that's when I'd stop calling people, I would drop off the
Mm.
radar for a little bit. My mom might reach out in a week's time and be like, hey, why have you been so absent? What's going on with you? But I used to just like duck and kind of have a freeze response where I wasn't reaching out to my community. I was becoming sort of isolated, and that never ever works well for anybody. And so when the chips are down and the going gets tough, it's important to understand we were never meant to do this alone. And in a protective and proactive way, how we need to cultivate community. So I have some community that are my paid community, meaning my own therapists and other people that I have
Mm-hmm.
recruited onto Team Vanessa. And I have a community of friends that I can count on for different kinds of support if that were to be needed. I also have a conscious community, so a group that I'm part of every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., who are other people really focused on consciousness in their lives. And so I can reach out for support in that group. The other community that I didn't realize I needed to cultivate until I was in my 40s, it was my tribe of women. And
Mm.
knowing that we can champion each other and empower each other and uphold each other and honor each other in really incredible ways. My tribe of women have got me through the challenges of the last 10 years or so, and
Mm.
how important they are in my life. And I'm so, so glad that in my tough times, I have those women to turn to.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. Oh, absolutely. I love that so much. Again, so much goodness there. So I just want to go back to a couple of things that you touched on. I think that the wellbeing team, like you called it, your support system, and having those faceted supports, I think it's so important. You're seeing your therapist regularly, and I think that's something in here in Australia we don't talk about as much. But in my groups, and my friends, and I'm not always saying it on outwardly there, but I definitely have a coach or a counselor ongoing all the time, because you need your support during menopause, having the medical support sometimes, and doctor support. I think that you need your friends, absolutely, and the ones that get you and that hold space for you, like you said, the conscious community of friends. I think that sometimes as you get older, you do discern who you're spending your time with and surrounding yourself with, because the support is so important and allows you to flourish and thrive. And I think, yeah, that's really important too, to be able to say, yeah, so some friends are probably for seasons, not always for the lifetime. So that's really important to note too. I love how you were talking about the rest, that you said that certain times, like, we can say, oh, I've got to go to the gym, or I've got to do this. And, we put that extra pressure, the shoulds ourselves, and, pressure on ourselves. And I think that self-care is that rest element and grace for ourselves in hard times is underestimated, that it's just as important as doing things, as being, or just sitting back and going, rest is now what I need. Like the body keeps a score. And Gabor Mate, his books are amazing. I read the latest one, and it's escaped my
The myth and the
um yes, it's amazing, and he's amazing. And I love his work too. So again, I get it. And I think that burnout. I work with a lot of women who are experiencing burnout, and the research shows that a big portion of it is emotional burnout as well as physical, but it can be the combination too. So I think all those things that you touched on were amazing. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to. The highlight reel, absolutely. But even though people will always share, more the joy and the positive, and I know that, I like to share more of the positive too. We know everyone's experiencing challenges. Beyond that, there's always challenges, and I feel like the more that we do talk about it, even if it's not, jumping on the internet, but it's something that we know that women and families and men and women are going through things, whether they're talking about it all the time, but just to understand and know that there are challenging times. Everyone experiences it. So yes, if the highlight reel's there and they're winning, there's also a lot of fails and challenges beyond that as well. So just reminding yourself of that. But I love how you talk about sharing that too.
Awesome. Yeah. And
Thank
I really do think the more, I mean, especially for myself and somebody like you, who we have sort of this platform where we're
you.
connecting with people, that we are vulnerable and we share our
Mm,
messiness as well as,
yeah,
all of the
yeah.
curated stuff that we're putting out into the world. It's so unifying as human beings, and
Mm,
in
yeah.
particular women.
Absolutely. We need to make it relatable. I loved when I was little, like the washing would stay in the line for like a couple of weeks because I just didn't get the energy to get up. And I'm like, and I'd show the piles of washing and I'm like, and I was thinking, oh, it might change. It's changed a little bit, but to be honest, it's still not, 100%. But yeah, no, I think that you might be, yeah, like I definitely put housework second. So, and I know that some people in their world, they put it first, but they say it helps with their clarity. And I get that. It depends. It's all about prioritization as well. But yeah, I believe fully in that the messiness of life is real, and yeah, sharing it in either a trusted, safe circle or when you feel more confident and comfortable outwardly. I think that's really important because we're all going through things. And yeah, thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Just about that, I do talk a lot about self-kindness. So giving yourself kindness on the journey. We have touched on it already, but I think that whenever you're doing that inner work and whenever you're growing yourself up and whenever you're, getting out of your comfort zone and maybe building your capacity in certain areas or challenging times, self-kindness, no matter what, is such a thread that needs to go through the journey. I'm always talking about it hand in hand. Self-care, self-kindness, they need to go hand in hand. Can you talk to me about the power of that in your life and what you think about that for mums?
I'm reminded in this moment of a conversation that I had with my own therapist very early on in our time together. And she said to me, and I can't even remember what the situation was. Maybe I had been a grumpy mom, or I had been a not very understanding ex-wife or something along those lines. And she had said to me, before we do anything else, Vanessa, are you willing to accept yourself as
Mm,
mother who? Fill in
mm,
the blank was grumpy or whatever it was. And I thought it was such an interesting question. Are you willing to accept yourself? Because when we grind against that which is, we argue with reality. And as
mm,
Byron Katie so adeptly says, if you argue with reality, you'll be wrong only
mm,
100% of the time. And so let's say I have a difficult moment with my children, or I react to my husband, or, I'm short with one of my team members. The first thing in terms of working through that situation is to accept
mm,
yourself as the person who,
mm,
and in accepting yourself, can you have grace and compassion for you, and can you understand, given that nothing in the universe is random, that that moment needed to be exactly that? Why?
mm,
Because it was.
mm,
And
mm,
just lean
absolutely.
into like the idea of sort of some sense of divinity in the fact that
Mm,
that's how it played out. And I don't know why it's above my pay grade to understand the workings of the universe, but to just really be able to lean into that understanding. And it opens up so much more breathing space for
mhm,
that self kindness and compassion to be able
mhm,
to settle in and seep through all of the cells of my being. And that changes how I then show up. You know,
mm,
anger is a projection of guilt. If I go
mm,
to guilt and I'm beating myself up and I don't accept myself and I grind against it, I'm probably going to be more yelly shouty rather than less.
I love that. Anger is a projection of guilt. I love that. And I think that if we can catch ourselves in those moments and be kind, and as you say, bring yourself back to what do I need? Can I accept myself in this moment and whatever's happening, what is? I love Byron Katie too.
Mhm.
Um, and I talk about resistance, like Eckhart Tolle talks about your, in acceptance or resistance, or enjoyment or enthusiasm. But I think the resistance part, like when I'm agitated, yeah, that emotional awareness and tapping back into yourself is so key. And then in that moment being kind, and it's a practice and a habit, and you can get there, and it's not like you get it and it's done. It's an everyday practice, right?
You come back to over and over. And I think for myself as well as every other person, like we're just humans. And so
Yeah.
they'll sometimes be longer stretches where you feel like it's coming up more. And then
Yes.
you'll have a stretch of time where you feel
Mm,
it's a little more easy and free flowing, and then you'll be back in
yeah.
a period of growth. And so just to accept it all as it comes and know that it is for you and not to you.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. I wanted to just finally ask you one last question. I know that you have an amazing program coming up. It's the Mums Collective. It sounds amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was really inspired. So recently, Maggie Dent, who all of the folks in Australia probably know very well, was here in Canada with me, and she is definitely part of my like women tribe. She is one of
Mm,
the people who has had my back and been in my corner for years now in terms of just supporting me as a mother and a professional and all of the things in life. And I really, really value my friendship with her. And we were talking about how sometimes us women don't really find our tribe until our kids are older and we're kind of into our 40s and our 50s, and how wonderful it would be for women to feel um, collected up in community with each other from the word go, to not have to
mm,
wait
mm.
until your 40s and your 50s to be like, oh yeah, good idea. So I have created a program called the Mom Collective. We will be coming together as a group of women for 3 weeks in a row. There will be content and sharing that happens on a set evening of each of those weeks, which will actually translate into morning time for you Australians. And in addition to that, there will be a bunch of resources and other things that I'm sharing out along the way, including some content that Maggie has generously gifted me for that purpose. And so it's going to be a time of affirmation and empowerment and really just understanding the power of community. There's
Yes.
something that happens synergistically when, to borrow from a biblical reference, I think the statement is something like when three or more are gathered. Like there's something about that group and the synergy of it. It adds up to more than its parts,
Yeah.
and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be part and privy to. So that's the Mom Collective, and I'm
Yay.
so pumped about it.
Oh, it sounds divine, and I love that the collective leadership togetherness. It is powerful. So I know it's going to be amazing. And where can they find out more about that, Vanessa?
Yeah, so if you head to any of my social pages, so Instagram, Facebook, it's linked in the bio. We've posted about it heaps. You can find it on my website, drvanessalapointe with an E on the end.com. So that's drvanessalapointe.com. And if you're part of my newsletter community, of course, that's coming around to you over the coming weeks as well.
Thank you. And I'll tag it here on this video when we share it so that people can jump on and claim that beautiful community. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure and a joy to always speak with you. And your work in the world is just making an absolute amazing difference. And thank you again for being here today with me.
That's so lovely, Rhiannon, and I shine it all right back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye for now.